Yes.
Thank you for letting me come before you tonight. I got to say first off that it's so important when communities and members like you come together and want to make where they live every day, where they send their kids to school, a better place. We don't have enough deputies out here to take care of all the crime or to be everywhere. So we supplement our patrols by our citizens that we serve. So I want to thank you for being here tonight because it's a very important thing. Our communities are growing, they're getting bigger. And you just don't know how important, how valued it is for us to be part of it. I'm not from here, I'm from the South. My wife grew up here. I have family right up here. My daughter goes to Kennedy, but we live in South King County. But it just shows how important and how connected we can be as large as we are in the Sheriff's Office. As I mentioned, I'm going to talk a few seconds about what we're doing at the Police Academy. I recently was transferred there from the Sheriff's Office. It's a 3-year term, teaching our basic recruits. Now, our recruits are made up 30 in a class from all over the state. But we get a certain number of seats, the Sheriff's Office, in each academy class. And right now, we've got 30 starting every 3 weeks. Because the need for officers and deputies out there is so great because of the generation gaps. You know, we have some older ones that are retiring, and they're so heavily in the upper echelons of those departments, and once they retire, we need more officers and deputies. One of the key functions that we're instilling in our brand new recruits and deputies is community involvement. Not only just to be out there and force and show, but to get out of their cars and talk to the communities and to start the programs like what we're doing here, dealing with the mentally ill and other challenging things that we're facing in law enforcement we've never faced before, or for maybe in other terms just ignored generations back. Budget cuts hurt things. The recent budget cuts and the way the economy went, we weren't unaffected by that. We're making great strides to make things better within our own department, but I can assure you the deputies coming out of the basic training academy that's working for us and for you are of the utmost quality, as are any of the other officers that's going to serve in any other parts of this state. So feel good that you're getting some good officers and deputies out there that want to serve your communities and want to make them better. They're living in those communities. Their kids are going to school in those communities. They're shopping there. And they don't want to have to deal with anything that you don't want to have to deal with. So that's kind of where we're going in the academy and reaching great things there. So I came tonight to talk to you about the parks. How many here knew that there is park patrols going on outside of our normal patrols in the Sheriff's Office? Most of you probably didn't know that. Yeah. About 3 years ago, I don't even remember how it came and how I became part of it, but we started summertime park patrols in King County's parks and trails. How many parks and trails do we have in King County? Yeah, I don't have a tape measure long enough to measure it, how many wonderful places they are to go out, ride your bike, walk, or whatever. There's hundreds and hundreds of miles. So we were trying to impact some of the major areas and trailheads that parks was having problems. Break-ins, cars vandalized, stuff like that. You know, drug activity at night when the citizens had left and went home and that. So we started the patrols. My budget was very small 3 years ago, and I can tell you this time this year, it's increased almost 80%. They've put more money into it because we generated a lot of work for them, honestly. We had great deputies that went out there on bicycles, on foot, patrolling in cars, and they found a lot of activity. Where was a lot of that activity? Right here in White Center. Lakewood Park, Steve Cox Park. It's on our top 5. The Parks Department understands that it's an area that absorbs criminal activity for a whole bunch of reasons. Some that are here in the community and some that come outside of the community. When Deputy Chivington had contacted me about that and asked, I was like, it was pretty funny because the night before I got an email from the parks directors about Lakewood Park. We were already on top of it. I can tell you we're going to be increasing more patrols in the White Center area. They've decided to continue the park patrols through the winter months. Normally it was just the summer months, but our hard work paid off and they like the numbers that they're seeing and they want to continue the patrols, hopefully to curb the crime. But like I mentioned before, we can't do it by ourselves. We need your involvement. We need your eyes, your ears. You increase our department in size by hundreds by seeing and hearing things in your own community and then letting us know what's going on. Some things that we're going to, I got business cards from the Parks Department. I'm going to leave them over here. If you see something, say it. They have websites on here. This information goes directly to them and then directly to me. Now, King County is a large area, and I mentioned there's a lot of parks and trails. I have a deputy that handles the north end, everything I-90 and north. He oversees Berg Gilman, Sammamish Trails, all those. I handle everything south of I-90 to the county line, but then I oversee the entire program, and I report to a captain here in the sheriff's office. So if you report to the Parks Department, it's going to get to me directly. And then we'll try to take the resources that we have and put it towards that. But we got to understand, like I said, we're limited in the resources that we have. You know, we're trying to do a full-time job of policing the parks and everything with part-time work. We're making great strides, but it's slow going. And with your input and you reporting to us, you know, we can combat the crime, hopefully, what's going on. So, do you have any questions?
So I'm curious, so when we, like I call, there's a neighborhood park, North Sherwood Park,
Okay.
I'm sure you're familiar with them. And so, you know, I walk there quite frequently with my dog, and I know Gil is there quite frequently too. So we call a lot, because there's been people sleeping in the park. So when we call and officers have come, is that part of the, because we never knew there was a park patrol.
Are you calling 911?
Yes.
Okay, no, that is not part of
Okay.
the deputies that work for me during the summer and now into the winter months. That's just regular deputies out
Okay.
there on patrol working. What we do, it's a 4-hour shift. And, you know, during the summer months, we have our normal areas, Sue's Creek, a lot of the important bigger trailheads is where we spend a lot of our time. I'll put out some schedules, and whoever responds, they're coming in for 4 hours before their shift, after their shift, on the weekends, and patrolling that area.
Mm-hmm.
Because King County is so big, you know, we can't always be, you know, up here in Sammamish or elsewhere. We've got to try to, you know, fly the flag all over the county so everybody sees it. So no, it would not be the Parks Patrol, but I can tell you the winter park patrols that we're going to continue, an extension from this summer, I'm going to be allocating most of the resources up here. Because Steve Cox Park, Lakewood Park, the Frisbee area is becoming a huge issue. The Parks Department is aware of it. They've contacted us, and we're going to allocate some resources towards that.
Just so that you're aware, the Cascade Middle School, the students there have, on the prevention team, alcohol and substance abuse prevention team, have taken an interest in that park and have documented like the things that people leave behind. And so I'm also wondering, is that something where, I mean, they would be great eyes and ears for you, and is that something where you might come and talk to them and about not patrolling the park, but being eyes and ears in the park because they walk through it to school and things like that anyway?
Well, that's something that the storefront officer, the 2 deputies here, would incorporate and help you guys with. We love, like I mentioned, to have your eyes and ears. It helps us do our job better. Things we don't see or hear, we're going to get that information through you. But at the same time, we'll make sure you're protected and you're safe. You know, and I don't want to send people into certain areas at certain times of night where I think they might come in harm's way. So yes, it's a good thing, and that's something I believe our storefront officers could look into and see if what information they have for us is helpful, and going forward, what we could do to partner. Yes. Yes.
I was wondering, what kind of issues are there with the Frisbee area of Lakewood Park?
Like most parks, you know, when closing time comes at dusk, it attracts, you know, drunks, alcohol violations, obviously drug violations that are going on through there, as well as maybe some prostitution if they have areas you can drive into. We do a good job of locking the parks at dusk. Some bathrooms that are located in a lot of the parks areas in the wintertime are completely closed. They don't open at all. It's just a way of us to try to cut down on the crime, because those kind of areas attract crime and vagrants and stuff like that. So we just lock the bathroom for the winter. It kind of helps with that. But in general, it's the crimes of drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. Yes, sir.
You had a card in your hand from Parks. Do you have more of those cards?
Yes, I got a big stack over there.
Because Parks is a big unit, and
Yes, it
I
is.
contact people in Parks, you may have a specific.
So when you contact them, we need to know if the park has a name, we need to know that, specific time and what activity that you were seeing or it was reported to you. And they do a wonderful job with all those thousands of miles that they manage of knowing where and who to send and what to talk to, and they get the information to us. And because we've partnered with them for the last 3 years, we've got to know the trails and the trailheads and the areas too. Yes, we have deputies that work the overtime for the parks. We also reach out to our precinct 4 deputies and undercover guys and that to kind of give us a hand, when we can't get patrols out there. Obviously you heard the sheriff talk, they're busy, got their hands full, but we try to use our resources the best we can to get out there and combat the crime. So take the card, it has information on it, report it, and also I want to offer the parks, they give out freebies. These are little clips, they light up, there's a thing you pull, the battery operated, you put them on your backpacks, give them to your kids, put them on their bikes, they're wonderful things. Christmas is coming up, stocking stuffers. So, if you have any other questions when it comes to the parks and that, please send it towards Deputy Chivington, he'll get it to me. Yes, sir.
Don't some of the parks close at dusk?
All the parks close at dusk, sir.
Theoretically, they're closed?
Yes. If they have gates, the county deputies, they have keys, we go around, it's part of our daily operation. We go and make sure those gates are closed, because like I mentioned, it keeps out crime. But that's just a gate for a vehicle, people can just walk around. Many of the parks have trails that lead into it from the neighborhoods. There's just no way for us to shut all those off. So at least we can keep vehicles, which is going to bring larger problems, but the problems I talked about still find their way into the parks. Yes. Any other questions?
I have
Yes.
just a quick one. How have the events in Ferguson, how have they affected how your classes, how you present material to your classes, or things you make your students aware of?
I can tell you we do a good job of talking and discussing what's going on in America right now. The sheriff mentioned it's a difficult time for us to be conducting police work. It is. I've been with the sheriff's office 16 years now. I've worked contract cities in Woodinville. I've been a school resource officer. And when I started 16 years ago, times are a lot different. We find ourselves being challenged more because there's very passionate citizens out there about an array of different topics. And what we do is we make sure that our recruits that are going through our academy and that are going to graduate understand that passion and the freedoms that we have in America within our cities and counties in that. We got to listen and let the citizens speak. There's rules they got to follow. We hope they do, and if they don't, then we'll enforce that when they cross that line. But like the sheriff had mentioned, the generation that's coming into the academy and what's graduating is different than what's standing here, what came before me. And they kind of understand things a little bit better. It's a technology age, they don't talk a lot. It's a lot of this, and even if they're sitting at a table together, they're like this. We just had it this morning. We had a bunch of recruits sitting around a table, and every one of them had their cell phones out, and they weren't talking to each other. So, I think they understand what they're getting into in law enforcement. I think those kind of incidences and what we learn from them only strengthens what we do as we go forward. You can take either side that you want, but the deputies here in King County are working really hard to make the relations with everybody in this room and throughout King County the best that it can be. Because we live in King County. When we put on this badge and this patch and put on the uniform every day, it means something to us. It's not just a job. And what we preach to our recruits, it's a career. You had jobs before you came here. This is your career. In a career, you make something of it, and you dig deep, and you make something better. And you make your cities and your towns better when you retire 20, 30 years down the road. They believe in that philosophy, and they want to get out and they want to help the communities the best that they can. We need to get back to the days when, your children can walk down the sidewalk at 10 o'clock at night and not worry about anything. And we're making those steps, and it's getting better. But like I mentioned before, we can't do it alone. We need everyone in this room, in this city, to make it a better place. Well, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
How do you go about selecting your recruits, and what's the racial makeup right now of the recruits that are coming in?
I don't know if you were here when the sheriff had spoke about that. Yes, there is a lot of white males as cops here in King County, throughout the nation. For whatever reason, it's hard to find good quality candidates that fill out applications, and we send them through oral boards and psych evals and that. This job is very important. Why? Because we have the right to take citizens' rights away. And we've got to make sure that the people that we're putting the badges on have the right mindset to do that. And when you start digging into people's lives, like we do when we hire people, you just find out that they're not the right fit for that. So it's a difficult job. We have about 400 deputies in King County on patrol, and I think our whole department makes up about 6, maybe, all deputies. How many deputies in King County? Overall, yes.
600?
Yeah, 600. Only 400 of those on patrol. So now multiply that by every single city that you see on a map of Washington State. They're all trying the same thing that we're doing. They're trying to find a good quality candidate. So if we get to them first, we got them. That means the other 200, 300 counties and cities just lost that good candidate. So the order, it goes away real quick. So it's a big process, and we want to make sure that the right morals and values and beliefs at the end of the academy, when they get the commission and go out and do their job, are going to do it ethically, morally, and right. Basically, like my dad taught me, when nobody's watching, what are you going to do? We're entrusted with a lot of power. We don't have cameras. The sheriff said it in our dash, on our bodies. We want to make sure we're doing the right thing. So we've got to pick the right people for that. And unfortunately, not everybody fits into that category. It's a tough job. The ratio or the breakup of it, majority is still white males. We are increasing our numbers in females that are coming through the academy, as well as African Americans and other ethnicities. So it is getting better, and it's increasing. The sheriff had mentioned we're changing some of the civil service rules to help grab some of those quality people, because we need to learn, we need people out there who can speak different languages, because we're dealing with so many different groups out there. So it is getting better, and I believe every deputy that's working in this county is upstanding and a fine woman and a fine gentleman. So.
How much does it cost to, for you to train a candidate?
Captain?
The number that we were using, I went through and we redid the program. I want to say it was just over $100,000 is what they estimated the cost was from recruiting, hiring, training, to getting them out on their own. Because you get paid from the moment you get hired, but you have 6 months worth of academy, 4 months worth of field training, so you get almost a year's salary, plus then all the costs of recruiting, backgrounding, training, etc. So a year's salary and benefits plus your portion of the overhead costs of $100,000 and change, probably.
So we understand
I
that.
can give you an exact number if you really want it, but that's.
So roughly $100,000 of your money. So we have to spend it the best way we can. So we're not just going to hire somebody who fills an application and say, here you go. We're going to make sure that we're spending your money in the best possible way. So once they get at the end of that year, so the day they get hired, they're not answering 911 calls till a year later. That's how long the process is, because our jobs have changed. I tell my recruits, you're going to carry this imaginary box with you through your whole career. You're going to go to every call, you're going to open it up and put that hat on. You're going to be a marriage counselor, you're going to be a juvenile counselor, you're going to be a father, a mother. So you've got to go into people's homes and help them solve their problems. You got to know which hat to put on. So it's a long process. It's a fun process, and we're producing a lot of good candidates once they hit the street.
I appreciate what you're.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, yes.
Please thank
Thank you, and we're very pleased to have our White Center Storefront Deputy.
See if this works here.
Here tonight.
So in theory, this is supposed to work. The firefighter said so.
It does work, yeah.
All right. All right, I'm skipping ahead here, I don't know how to go back. This is my first PowerPoint, by the way. There's a laser pointer. Okay, everybody here remembers me, right? I had my contact info up there, but I can't go back, but we'll figure it out here in a second. I made this just because I'm a visual learner, and it kind of helps sometimes if you see the actual numbers and the dots on the map on kind of where things are happening and everything. This here is what we call the lowlands for precinct 4. So this particular spot's White Center. This is where the storefront is right here. And then, so we're in charge of these 3 districts, the King 11, the King 1, and the King 7. And all the King means is just our radio talk, how we get our, who we are. So when you come into work, they say, hey, you're the King 1. So you know this is what you're responsible for that shift.
City of Burien is purple.
City of Burien, City of Seattle up here in the white. So just an idea kind of where we're talking about.
Recommend we do it here.
Okay, thank you. Next slide. So this is the same map we just saw with some incidents here. So here's the key right here: larcenies, residential burglaries, auto thefts, and auto recoveries for the same map. This is the month of October. So for the month of October, that's for those 4 things. That's what's been documented there and where they were at. One thing on this map that's not is the time of the day or anything like that condition. So next slide.
And real quick, whoever was talking about why you always call 911, why you always call 911 to report everything is because when a map looks like that and everything's really random, where do I send your cop? If there's clusters that develop, the more data you have, the more you get clustering, which helps us see where crime patterns are happening. When people aren't calling, you get isolated stuff scattered all over, and there's no way to crime map. There's no way to know where to send the officers to proactively influence crime.
And this is what the crime analyst gave me. So when I asked her for the information, this is what she emails me. So she's the one that's making all this. So this is just the same map, month of November here.
So it looks like crime went down in November?
You know, I'm seeing what kind of probably most of you are all seeing, but if we went back a slide, I have actual numbers coming up, but for some things. So, yeah. Next slide, please.
Your violent crime is down, your property crime is up. If you
And
look at the
we'll show
trend line over time.
We'll show that too. I got that slide on
Do
here.
you?
So, so this is a 3 years, or 1 year. I'm sorry. Just kind of like a part 1 crime. Part 1 crimes are the homicides, all the big crimes. They're all listed down here, but that's just kind of a lines, the graph there showing you, giving you some numbers. So you'll see there's spikes. That may or may not be a reason for that. Summertime, normally, obviously you're gonna have more people outside doing stuff. In wintertime, you're gonna have more people staying inside. Next slide. And then this is the same time frame for part 2 crimes, which is the assault, the misdemeanor assaults, vandalism, stolen property, fights, trespasses, things like that. So.
And sometimes this can be really misleading when you look at part 1 and part 2, because like the things you really want cops out doing, like getting drunks off the road, DUI arrests actually will cause a huge spike in your part 2 crimes. It'll look like the world's falling apart, and it's because the cops took a whole bunch of DUIs off the road. It's actually a really good thing sometimes. So sometimes these are kind of skewed too in what it means when you actually look at what the crimes are. So really good DUI work will actually cause a huge spike in part 2 crimes. So just kind of keep that in mind.
I'm glad I have the captain here. Next slide. So here's the crime trend that he was talking about. So the red will be the violent crime. As you can see, it's going down. And this is over 3 years right here. And then the blue crime trend is the residential burglaries, which are trending up. So this just gives you the month and the years down here that you can't really read. And then the numbers for the months.
So part one, part two is the way the FBI defines their crime, and they mix burglaries and violent crimes and stuff. They kind of mix all that together into part one. And part two is really deceptive because of the DUI part, some of the, fights and that kind of stuff being mixed in there. So when you break it out, burglary is the thing that really affects the most residents in your area. It's the most direct impact of a property crime. The other one you can also do is auto theft, where you can combine the two. Your number will look pretty similar. So that's why I pull burglary out. It kind of tells you what the trend is on crimes that are property crimes truly affecting you. Violent crimes is pulled out. Things that are violent crimes that truly are affecting members of your community. And takes out things that don't really belong in there, like burglaries or car thefts don't really belong in the violent crime section. So that's kind of how I view it. So when you break it down the way I broke it down, it's a little more demonstrative of what's going on in your community with. If you combine these two, part one crimes look like they're going up. It's because burglaries are going up, not because violent crime is going up. So by separating out burglaries, it kind of shows you what's going on with the violent part of the crime versus the burglary portion or component of part one. So.
Next slide, please. So here's a little bit more of a breakdown on burglaries and things. Where I got these numbers from are specifically just for that King 1 district, so it's not the whole thing, because it was too much, and I kind of was figuring out how to build the PowerPoint, and next time I'll have more, it'll be better. So for the month of October, the total entries in our report writing system, which we call IRIS, 362. So if you think about it, 31 days with 2 deputies working per shift, that's a lot of work. So not making excuses, but if you're thinking, hey, I'm not getting the response I want, things like that, well, because there's 362 case reports written in the month. So they're pretty busy. They're lucky if they get to eat lunch during the shift. So this is forced entry residential burglaries. So there was 12 for the month of October, and it went down to 9 in November. About almost the same number of entries, reports written and stuff. And not all these reports are actually incident reports. Some of them are, abandoned vehicles being towed. We have to log that in there. Follow-ups by the detective for the same case number. So, but most of those are majority of the numbers are incident reports.
What's the difference between an FE and an F?
Forced entry and non-forced entry. So you left your door unlocked. Somebody just walked in, they didn't force their way in. And the 362, that doesn't count the number of calls they've actually gone to. So for, one shift, if they write 3 to 5 case reports, they've probably gone on 10 to 15 other calls that they didn't necessarily need to have a case report written for. So you can take a look at those numbers there. So forced entry commercial burgs, non-forced entry commercial burglaries, attempts for the residential burglaries, attempts for commercial burglaries.
Those are the ones that have been successful, basically.
Correct. Yeah, those are the ones when the owner came in and said somebody tried to kick my door in, but it didn't look like they got in, nothing's missing. So we call that an attempt. So, any questions on this? Next slide. So this guy right here is the guy who's been breaking into the Castillo's supermarket twice. That's the best picture we have of him. It's not very good, so. But this was released on the news, so I wanted to show it. Kind of practicing putting pictures on PowerPoint too. So.
It's kind of,
Is that recent?
from looking.
That's recent, yes. That was in the last couple months. So.
I am curious, pictures like this, we have cell phones that take just amazing pictures. Why are there all these cameras and banks and stuff? They show you this blurry picture. Who is this guy? He could be my neighbor.
I don't know.
Well, a lot of lenses, the cameras, like you buy at Costco where you get the $2.99 set, those lenses are super cheap. So that's why you get really low quality, is you have to buy much higher quality resolution lenses to make amazing video. The other problem is retention. If you make really, really high resolution video with a really high resolution lens, you eat up your storage space really quick in your computer. So either you start doing snapshot stuff, where instead of doing full moving video, you start taking snapshots, or you lower the resolution. Is the cheap and easy fix. So people tend to lower the resolution so that they can store more data. So that's really how it comes. I mean, it's a lot of times your system's capable of beautiful data. It's just then you'd have tape over every 3 or 4 hours because you'd fill your computer up with the data.
I understand.
And the one thing is, that if you saw the actual picture of this guy, you're gonna be able to say, that's him. Even with the resolution.
small.
So. Yeah. Next slide. I think this is the last one. Yep. So, I actually found this while I was trying to build this PowerPoint, so the crimereports.com, it's actually pretty neat. You can get those, you just type your address in, the area you live in, it's on the sheriff's office website, and then it'll give you the map that you saw at the beginning with the incidents that are happening. You can just hold your mouse over it, and it'll give you a little brief description on what that is. So it's kind of neat if you're interested in knowing what's going on in your neighborhood.
Is it working now?
It was working, that's why I was like, oh, this is kind of neat, no one ever told me about
Yeah, a
this.
few months ago I tried going on, I could not.
It wasn't, yeah, and I don't know how often they update it, I don't know how fast it gets updated.
Okay, thank you.
So, I don't know, yeah, I know, but it's kind of neat. But other than that, you know, we have had some success stories, so I know there's that burglary in Green for the coffee shop. Kind of keeps getting hit over and over again, but I think they're still looking for him, but, you know, like the sheriff said, he wants the guys on foot, and actually, Captain Bo just sent out an email, a couple deputies on Graveyard were walking around White Center on foot and found a stolen car, and actually ran back to their car and caught the guy, so. Yeah, that was good. And then I remember last meeting, there was a gal and guy here saying there were shots fired. She lived on Myers Way, and there were shots fired. And nobody called the police, and she was kind of upset about it a little bit. But when I started looking through that particular area, there was actually a sergeant that on-viewed the shots fired. He didn't actually see the guy shoot, but he heard the gunshots and was sitting right there. And then tried to find a car. A car was speeding off, and he tried to find it, and it lost him. Kind of blacked out its lights and drove away, but it was documented, and so right place, right time.
Just, I think I asked this last time too, but you've been around for a while longer. Do you have any way, or can you compare statistics for this district compared to a district like in eastern King County or down in southern King County?
I've worked up north. I've worked in North Bend. I was a North Bend car for a while. I worked in Shoreline and out of even in Metro downtown. This place by far is, I mean, I'd say it's for the whole sheriff's office, White Center District and Burien, the city of Burien is probably a toss-up for who's the busiest.
So to kind of give an apples-to-apples comparison, I did an analysis for Skyway, and so it happens White Center and Skyway, unincorporated North Highline. You guys have very similar demographics as far as citizens. The difference is the commercial district difference. We have a commercial district in White Center. There's not a commercial district in Skyway, same type. But I can do that. We can see like demonstrative Skyway versus White Center. I'll tell you that you guys are much busier than Skyway is. West Hill is what we call it, which is the Skyway is kind of the old slang for it. But West Hill is substantially slower than you guys are as far as crime calls for service. Both the violent crime and property crime are much higher in North Highline than they are in Skyway. So that kind of gives you an apples to apples. They're as close as you're going to get to an apples and apples with. It's unincorporated, exact same police staffing levels, pretty much the same demographics as far as number of people living in the area and stuff, within a couple thousand.
I guess you have to maybe fine for 1,000 or people or something, or businesses.
I can make numbers dance and do whatever you want them to.
I know you
do.
can.
Tell me how you want them, I'll make them look at it. But that's, you have to have good data. I mean, that's, at the end of the day, you have to have good data. I can compare you guys to the city of Seattle or to Burien, and it's not really good data because you have different, you go into Burien, you have different law enforcement, you have different resources. You really want to compare as close as you can to a light community, and the closest light community you have is going to be West Hill. If I compare you to unincorporated Fall City, where deer outnumber people, and there is no racial equity. I mean, you have a hugely white population out there. You have no urban environment. You have no apartment complex.
Okay.
It's not really a fair comparison of data. It's not going to tell you a lot. It's going to tell you that their crime rate is probably totally different than yours, but what does that really tell you?
And I've been finding that White Center's a little bit like Shoreline, where it's not necessarily the people that live in White Center commit the crime, it's just, there's such big thoroughfares running through it, that it's the people passing through that are doing all this stuff, and it's easy access to get to the freeways, because Shoreline had Highway 99, and Shoreline's pretty good, I mean, area to live in, but you go up and down Highway 99, you can make arrests all day long. And Skyway is just kinda out of the way to get to, so unless you're purposely going the Skyway, why would you pass through Skyway?
It's just the perception, you know, I mean, it's like,
A lot of our.
you live where, in a White Center, or you?
I will tell you right now, 99% of law enforcement is exactly that, it's perception. I mean, some of the stuff the sheriff talked about with the Ferguson stuff, when you talk about that stuff, perception is actually the issue, not reality, I think a lot of times, but perception becomes reality when it's reinforced over a generation. So, when you look at White Center, Rat City, reality and perception are not the same thing, you know?
That's why I
There's nice places to eat in White Center, I particularly enjoy going to lunch up there. I mean, there's nothing wrong with White Center, but over time, you create that reality. It takes time to break that reality too.
Julian, I was glad to hear you say that there are some deputies patrolling at night in the commercial area. Because I was just thinking about that today and all the graffiti and garbage and junk on the streets. So I would like to ask Captain Bowe if you could please keep that up, because I think that may make quite a difference.
So I'm a positive reinforcement guy, it's kind of my thing. What he's referring to, what just got sent out, was a commendation that was just put in, the files of your Graveyard White Center guy. Your Graveyard White Center guy goes through, walks the entire business district and wiggles every single door to make sure every door in that district is locked, every business remember to lock their doors every single night. He does it every night, he knows every single person in White Center, and he's now training the new people to go out and walk White Center with him every night. So what he's referring to is a combination that just went in to support that deputy's action on Graveyard White Center. And you don't see it because we're all abed, but at 3 o'clock in the morning, that guy's out there checking and wiggling every single door in White Center, so.
That's great.
So, do you all know who the new tagger is?
No.
Okay. There's a new graffiti tagger. Gil got a number of photos of the tags, and it's and unfortunately, one of the murals got tagged.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gil's been keeping me updated with the emails, so I just don't know who it is. But, so I mean, the good thing is, you know, if normally the lazier deputies who want to slow down and start ending their career, they don't come to White Center. So all the deputies that work White Center, you really can't be lazy. You have to go out and work. Him walking the district, probably him just being bored in his car, sitting by himself, and he's like, I need some fresh air. So he just, decides to keep working and walk, so.
So does Greenbridge still have their storefront deputy?
Yes.
So what are the stats like in that community? I mean, are there particular issues that go on in the Greenbridge or Seal the Gardens that?
I'll be honest with you, they report their stats out directly to their council, and I don't track it very well, or not with their council, their housing authority over there, is who gets the report, and I don't track it very well, so I don't.
And that storefront deputy and I were assigned 2 different shifts, so we don't really get to, unless it's just passing, or we haven't really had an opportunity to sit down and discuss anything.
But at other times, I mean, the department is called to Greenbridge.
And that should be accurate. When we're talking within the community, the storefront tracks what's going on within the housing authority community, that specific area. There's still, those numbers are all included, the numbers that we're referencing when we say the King 1. Greenbridge is within the King 1. So those numbers are inclusive in the King 1 number. So statistically, it's included the numbers that Deputy Chivington presented.
So the Greenbridge numbers were
Part of that.
So there's not a separate Greenbridge section in the report services. It's all the King 1.
What about King 7? I know you don't have all those stats, but that's Boulevard Park primarily.
Right, a little bit top half.
How busy is that?
Not as busy as the King 1. King 1's the busiest of the districts up here. The King 1 basically is White Center, Top Hat, for the most part, is busier than Boulevard Park. But I can get you exact numbers if you want them.
And I can throw them on there on the, the
Yeah,
next one, so.
yeah, we might like to see.
Like I said, I kind of ran out of time with me just learning how to.
Thanks for bringing it.
Yeah.
Then what's the little square that's King 11?
I think that's just old, isn't it? I mean, that's just,
We have a lot of districts, we did our districting like 40 years ago. And with annexations and incorporations and everything else, districts have kind of got eaten up. So like the King 11, we actually don't man the King 11. King 11 at one point was a district, an entire district that had a car dedicated to it. We don't even man it anymore, but it's still in our
there's like a King
districts,
9 on the
it's
south
left.
end of SeaTac.
There's one little spot on Aurelia Road, it's about this long, that is unincorporated King County. Between the 5 or 6 or 8 cities that have pieces of Aurelia Road there's one little chunk nobody took. That is still an unincorporated, it's called the King 9. It's an unincorporated patrol district that still remains from 40 years ago. I mean, we never even go there, so. I don't think there's even a house in there. I think it's just a section of the
Yeah,
roadway.
there's a spot like that up north, right northeast of Kenmore, it's called the Boy One, and I think one time they dispatched me to the one and said, you know, we had a Boy One.
We have a square block in downtown Bellevue too. Just for whatever reason, it was never, there's little square blocks. If you ever look at Thomas Guide, you'll find little tiny blocks all over the county that were never technically annexed. They still exist as old patrol districts from when King County was King County of old.
Are you, what hours are you working now?
Normally 2 PM to 10 PM, and the days off are rotating, so tomorrow will be my Monday, and I'll be Friday through Tuesday this week.
So, and I know you're not in the office all the time, but you're there sometimes. Do you find people coming into the?
Oh, yeah, no, people, if I'm in there, normally if I have paperwork to do, or any, you know, any sort of break, I try to stop in the storefront, and I say hi to all the, you know, Uncle Mike comes and talks to me every day I'm in there, so.
He likes you.
But, yeah, no, people are always coming in there, so.
And we can see you now too.
Yes, Captain Bo and I tore the tent
Did you
down.
see our remodel? That was our remodel.
So my goal for the storefront is I'd like to clean it up a little bit, make it a little bit more attractive for the patrol guys, that they, you know, that way it always looks like somebody more's in there, they can go in there at night and feel like they can sit in there and use it more, make it more patrol accessible, have forms in there so they don't have to run all the way back to precinct 4 to grab whatever, so.
There was, they just busted a bunch of massage parlors in
Yeah.
Erie.
Yeah, that's-
Were there any in White Center?
Yes.
In the business district?
You know, I helped out with the beering one this morning with the residents. I don't remember which, White Center one it was, but I think there was 2 in White Center.
I think they're beering still.
Were they still beering?
Yeah, we did 2 in
They said
Beering.
unincorporated.
They were right next to each other, pretty much. And, I hope they're wrong.
Because there were so many people involved with that they'd have a team go to the business and then a team go to the owner's residence. So I was assigned to one of the ones in Beery and the residence, so.